Hello, this is Dr. Rebecca Wood, and I would like to welcome you to the Week 7 lecture. This week we will discuss the process of revision, which includes writing, rewriting, and editing. Another entirely important step is reading your paper, and we want to begin by quickly skimming over your entire paper. Have you included all the parts of the assignment? Should there be a cover page or title page? If so, please make sure and include that piece in your final product. Does the text of the paper fulfill the requirements of the assignment? Is your paper as long as it needs to be to get a good grade? Did the assignment call for research and therefore require in-text citations for all material found in your research, as well as a references page? As you know, I strongly recommend that you complete your documentation as you're writing your paper rather than trying to go back and do it at the end of the writing process. And is all of your text double spaced with the first line of each paragraph indented about ½ inch? And is each paragraph about 1/3 to 1/2 a page long with plenty of good details to make it interesting for your reader, and also are all those details from research documented carefully? And have you run a spell check to make sure there aren't any embarrassing typos so that you can get those out of there? And then read the entire paper more closely with an open mind. So we want to read what we already have written, and that's very important. We can't really revise if we don't know what's in there. And it's not just what we think is in there, but what we know is in there. And your first draft or two of your paper should not be perfect. Perfection is an unattainable goal, and trying to be perfect slows down the writing process. The early stages of the writing process should focus on coming up with ideas, connecting our research material to those ideas, and organizing the material that we have, as well as possibly being creative and having fun. Reading your paper out loud can really help you find missing words and other easy-to-miss mistakes. I also recommend printing out your drafts when you read them so that you can see them better than you can see them on the screen. And then read what you wrote in your introduction. Try to read as if you are a member of your audience and not the person who wrote the paper. Does your paper have a strong thesis statement in the introduction that tells the audience what you're trying to say with this paper? In fact, what is your main point? Have you explained what your paper is about in the introduction? Have you discussed everything you promised to discuss in the paper in the introduction? Do you have specialized terminology in your paper that should be explained in the introduction? And have you used acronyms in the paper such as IE that should be written out the first time, such as Internet Explorer, and then we put our abbreviation in a parentheses after we rename our information? And then read what you wrote in your conclusion. The conclusion of the paper could be considered the most important part. That is where you get to have the last word with your audience. And then, still reading as a member of the audience, have you repeated your thesis or main point in your conclusion without using the same exact words? Have you wrapped up the main subtopics of your paper? And make sure that you do not accidentally start a new topic in your conclusion. We don't want to start a new discussion about polar bears if our paper was all about endangered tigers. And then the paper's journey goes from the introduction to the conclusion, so we want to check for smooth transitions between ideas, sentences, and paragraphs. Does the middle of the paper lead the reader from the introduction to the conclusion in a logical manner? And if you are using subtopics, please make sure that they're all in the paper, just as you promised in the introduction, and is all of the material for each subtopic in the correct place in the paper? So one way you can check for organizational issues is to outline your paper again. And so an outline can give you a good idea of whether your paper has any organizational issues as you read it, revise it, and editing it. Did you find yourself putting the same subtopic material in a couple different places in the paper and subsequently onto the outline? If so, that material should be moved and placed together. Getting input on your paper. Perhaps you have a classmate that you've noticed on the discussion board that you feel that you respect their opinion and you would like them to read over your paper. You could email them and ask them if that would be okay with them and ask them to give you some feedback. You could also have a family member, friend, or coworker read your paper and make some helpful comments. Now, you're not required to take any of their advice. It's your paper. You could also ask your instructor questions about the paper, or you could email me and see if I could look your paper over for you. Make sure that it's not right at the deadline because it will be too late then, so make sure you give me at least a day or two ahead of time so I can look at it before it's due. And do you have enough lead time to work with a research librarian or a tutor? And you want to make sure that you can do that, especially if you would like to have a professional look at your paper. And then editing for grammar and spelling. Does each sentence have a main noun and verb? Does the paper have any long sentences that leave you breathless when reading them out loud? Those might be run-on sentences in need of punctuation or being split into 2 or 3 shorter, clearer sentences. Are there any words in the paper that seem to be out of place? You can use Microsoft Grammar and Spell Check, but the grammar check is never quite as good as the spell check, but it can help you catch things that you would like to fix. And then our friend the Purdue Owl has some very helpful information for the revision process, and I will be posting this lecture in PowerPoint format so that you can click on the links and get to the pages that I've mentioned here. And so a careful revision of your paper could be worth at least a whole letter grade or even more. So please save enough time to revise carefully so that you can get the best possible grade and have the best possible paper. I hope you all have a great week. Thank you. Bye-bye.